Right, good morning, everybody. Wow, that's a good echo. Good morning, and a warm welcome to this session, Deal or No Deal, Optimising the Spinout Process. So I'm Adam Stoughton, I'm chairing the session today. I work for Evotech. We're a company which undertakes drug discovery and development. We invest in pre-seed projects coming out of universities with a view to creating, in most cases, new companies, new spinouts at the back end. So it's a session relevant certainly to what I do. And also I'm a board member of Praxis Oral, soon to be Knowledge Exchange UK. And to get a plug-in for our current recruitment campaign, you may well have seen that we are in the process of recruiting some new board members for Praxis, and would encourage any of you who could have interest in this to check out the advert in more detail. It's an amazingly rewarding role. I've been doing it for about 3.5 years now. I'm one of those that is cycling off in the next few months. It's a great way to influence the future strategic direction of the organisation, and would thoroughly recommend it to anybody who could be interested. So, the session today, optimising the spin-out process. Clearly, spin-outs continue to be a hot topic, and we could probably debate for most of the next hour and a quarter whether or not they occupy a disproportionate amount of attention in government and knowledge exchange bandwidth altogether. But they're here to stay. They're going to remain a hot topic. The independent review of spin-outs, the USIC guide and its recent updates, all really underscore the focus on spin-outs as an important vector for knowledge exchange, and really the desire to see a rising tide in the country in terms of best practice in enabling really robust spin-outs to come out of our higher education institutions. Now, I'm guessing because you've chosen this session that spin-outs are of some relevance to you in your day-to-day jobs. Maybe spin-outs are what get you out of bed in the morning. It's the knowledge exchange equivalent of a double espresso for you. For others, maybe not. Maybe the prospect of another spin-out fills you with a mixture of dread and panic. Oh God, not another one. Either way, and hopefully not too many towards that second end of the spectrum, but either way, we really hope that you can take away from this session some practical, actionable insights and some inspiration, both from two excellent case studies that colleagues from universities of Edinburgh and Birmingham will present, but also the subsequent roundtable discussions where we'll get you engaging with each other to share ideas and inspiration. So before I hand over to our first speakers, just to run through the format for the next hour and a quarter, we will kick off with two case studies, firstly from Vince from Birmingham, secondly from Veronica and Emily from University of Edinburgh, Edinburgh Innovations. And then we'll move into a couple of roundtable sessions, and we'll posit some questions for you to consider around your tables. We'll spend about 15 minutes on each of these. At the end of them, we'll have 5 minutes for some very quick fire feedback. So we'd ask you to identify a rapporteur on the table to do that. I mean, fantastic, we've got a full house, so it's going to have to be pretty quick feedback there, but I'm sure we'll get some great responses. So, without further ado, I'm very pleased to hand over to Vincent Coole from University of Birmingham to run through our first case study. Vince, over to you.
Thanks, Adam. Hello, everybody. Good morning. Delighted to have a full house today. My name is Vincent Coole. I'm from the University of Birmingham Enterprise, the TTO for University of Birmingham, and I'm going to be talking to you today about operating divisions. I'm going to give you an idea of what they are, how we use them, why we use them, the benefits of operating divisions, some of the challenges, and then some of the things to think about if you were thinking about implementing ODs at your own institution. So just to give you a little bit of background to them. So at the University of Birmingham, the first trading entity was launched back in 2013. And this was mainly just sort of service-led. It was coming out of consultancy where academics were thinking about perhaps setting up their own company, but were a bit worried about the risks of doing so. So it was kind of set up to give the consultant a brand. And it operated in that fashion for a few years. Until 2021, there was a bit of a turning point because Mashabo Health Sciences, which is a toxology service, they decided that they wanted to spin out. They'd had a number of years building up clients, contracts, a network, and they decided they wanted to spin. And this was a bit of a game changer because it really then set the foundations for ODs to be a kind of pre-spin-out entity. Now, that was achieved. It was a bit of a learning curve, and it gave us food for thought on how perhaps it could be done in a more optimal way. But they've gone on to be a successful spin-out, and so, you know, that journey has been a positive one for them. And for us, it led to the launch of what we call Enterprise OD, and that was been developed over the last couple of years, and I'll talk a little bit more about that shortly. So operating divisions, I'm just going to talk about what they are, why we use them, and how we use them at the University of Birmingham Enterprise. So this is really the kind of the best definition I could come up with for what ODs are. So operating divisions are an entity that operates and presents itself to the market much like a limited company, but with the legal management, insurance, and financial management carried out by UOBE. So essentially, we're doing all of the backroom, behind-the-scenes stuff while the researchers go out there onto the market, get trading experience, and generate new contacts and new clients. And so why do we do it? Why do we think this works? Well, crucially, it's a way of testing their service, their business proposition on the market in a real way. And so they're going out there, they're presenting themselves like any other company would and providing a service. And by doing so, they're gathering industry insight, they're gathering a trading history, they're learning all the time about their market, where perhaps to focus, where perhaps it's not working. And it also then establishes a brand and grows brand equity. And so we have ODs that have established a brand to the extent that other companies in their space sort of think of them as just like any other company. And by doing the OD model, they're obviously going to get university TTO incubator support. So alongside actually doing the trading, we have entrepreneurs in residence that run workshops with them. They're being guided all the time. They're discussing their journey with our spin-out managers, our IP managers, and learning all the time and then feeding back to our entrepreneur residents and to colleagues at University of Birmingham Enterprise about how things are going when they're doing contracts in the marketplace. So it's, in a way, for operating divisions that are thinking about, at some point, spinning out, it's giving them sort of time to develop. So we find that some of our operating divisions are not only gathering that market insight, but they've got time to perhaps get their management team in place before they spin out. They might get people who they plan to have working for them when they spin out, but they are, in the meantime, subcontracted to work for them via us, via University of Birmingham Enterprise, okay? So how do we do it? So as I mentioned before, the contracting, all of the behind-the-scenes stuff is managed by us at University of Birmingham Enterprise. And the university provides its liability and indemnity insurance, and all of the financial interactions are managed by us. So the invoicing and then distribution of payment. And the payments are distributed to a designated account that is set up for that operating division. We charge 15% management fee on every contract that goes back to the university. Where there's licensing involved, we sometimes will have a technology transfer fee that would be paid after a certain threshold. The revenue that goes into the operating division account can be used at the founder's discretion. Okay, so they could perhaps take it as personal income. They could take it back into the university for whatever purpose they might want in their school or their facility. They might want to use it to pay for comms, websites. They might want to bring in freelancers, or they might want to pay students or graduates who might do some work for them, or they might want to use it to pump prime a spin-out at some point. We have value proposition workshops that are provided by, we have entrepreneurs in residence. We usually, when we're setting up an operating division, we will encourage them to work with our EIRs on those sessions, because they find them incredibly invaluable. Really gives them a sense of, okay, what is the focus of my business, and how can I develop it? And we have some sort of translational funding available to support them. So one of the challenges is that, okay, there's an operating division that's going to launch itself into the market, but we don't have any money. We don't, to get started, to get a leg up. So we have something called EBF, Enterprise Birmingham Fund, which can be used here and there for certain purposes until the OD starts generating revenue, at which point they can start developing their brand and paying out for whatever they need. So Enterprise OD, this was, as I say, this was a program that really developed after we did the spin-out for Mashabo, and it's a comprehensive program to cover all of our OD activity. It's a real cross-company initiative, so we have a OD strategy group, and it really, really requires that kind of collaborative working between teams. So the contracting management is done by my team, the consultancy services team. We have IP managers doing due diligence and managing any kind of IP aspects, any licensing work. And then we have our spin-out managers who are working with them on their route to spinning out. The program is divided into 3 pathways. So we have what we call Consult OD, which would be the more sort of traditional service-led operating division. Then we have Spin OD, so this is a tailored pathway for those operating divisions that are planning from the get-go to spin out after a certain period. And then one that we've got in development is Shape OD. So we're getting more and more researchers coming from our social sciences and arts and law colleges who are wishing to commercialize their research. We find that operating divisions is a really, really good vehicle for Shape researchers to test their business, to test their service and ideas on the market. And so that's something that we are quite excited to develop at Birmingham. So we have in our portfolio about 15 in operation. We have others that are in application stage. We have operating divisions from a range of different disciplines. These are logos of some of the ones that we have in operation at the moment. So, for example, Bimats is a dental materials testing service. Ebraphase is in the AI space. And Dexter is an interesting one. The Dexter software is essentially cleans healthcare records to make them more efficient and optimal. And way back when I started, so this is back at the end of 2021, one of the first meetings I went to was with the researchers from Dexter who were very, very keen just to spin out. They wanted to get out there. They were excited about the commercial potential for this software, and they wanted to spin out. And the spin out managers were, okay, well, we'll see what we can do. Then a guy called Dan Summers got involved, and he started working with them in the capacity of a chief commercial officer, and he heard about operating divisions, and he basically said, look, this is a great idea because this gives us time to build up the brand, to perhaps form partnerships, get contracts, seek out investors before we actually spin out. And I'm just going to play you now a brief clip of Dan and one of the researchers from Dexter talking about their experiences of working as an operating division.
Dexter is some groundbreaking software which takes real-world data, electronic health records, and it turns it into something called real-world evidence.
Dexter is able to process the hospital data, find ways to improve the care pathways, find ways to audit performance, enable every single person in a hospital setting to do quality improvement, research, and clinical trials. So one product, multiple applications.
Dexter originated out of years of research at the University of Birmingham's Institute of Applied Health Research, where clinicians have knowledge engineered all of their research into algorithms which help to automate and transform the data from electronic healthcare records. And that's what's now commercially viable in Dexter today.
University of Birmingham Enterprise, through the intermediate staff, provided us the operating division, which enabled us to find the right clients, find the right funding sources, and get our aims and objectives right. And this operating division is a crucial step in our path to becoming a spin-out company. So this has worked well at a time when we don't have the structure, the resources, the capacity, and not knowing the exact direction we will be traveling towards, because Dexter is a versatile product which can do not one but many, many functions in healthcare data science.
Having worked with a lot of startups and particularly spin-outs at this point, I was really, really excited by the operating division at the University of Birmingham. For me, this was a perfect blend. Many startups and spin-outs happen too early. They happen with imperfect market knowledge, an imperfect team, lack of funding, and as soon as they're out there, the clock's ticking in terms of next funding and cash runway. For me, this is a perfect vehicle to enable spin-outs to enjoy some support from the university, but still to be as agile and as flexible that they need to pivot to succeed.
You get support with understanding your product, enabling you to take it to the market, enabling you by bringing the right clients, providing you with the capacity and the funding sources so that you can thrive when you spin out.
We're already really delighted with the progress that Dexter's made and the impact we've already had. We feel like we're only really just getting started.
The main purpose in the future will be about democratizing health data research for better care for patients, for better outcomes.
Real-world evidence as a discipline is really quite young, and it's growing very, very quickly worldwide. And we're very excited to grow here in the UK, grow abroad. We've got some great partners already, and we're here to make a great impact and bring health benefits and cost savings in healthcare around the world.
Okay, so you know, as they mentioned there, they've already made, you know, Dan was saying that they've made a number of partnerships already. They've landed big contracts with the NHS. They've got partnership agreements with companies like IQVIA, AstraZeneca, Pfizer, Globant, and they've really built their network. They built their team. Now, I can tell you, at the beginning, Krishna, who was speaking there, he was dead against the operating division model. And now, I think, as you can see, he really, really likes it. And they're not in a sort of state of hurry so much because they've had the time to develop. Now, their end goal is definitely to spin out, which they will be doing pretty soon. But they're doing it now in a much stronger position than they would have done it 2 years ago, before they had all of these partnerships, these contracts that they have now, and they've got a business development person in place. They've got various other team members who are helping provide the service. So that just gives you an idea of one of the operating division journeys from the outset, planning to be a spin-out. So I'm just going to talk now just about some of the challenges. It's not all a bed of roses. There are challenges to something like this, and we're always learning ourselves all the time. One of the challenges is making sure that the researchers, the OD founders, understand the model and, crucially, its limitations, because it isn't actually a limited company, and we do get a lot of questions. Can we have a company credit card? Or can we set up a subscription service? And things like that. We can't, there are just certain things that, we can't do. We can do a lot. It can really imitate the operations of a real company, but there are obviously some things that it cannot do. But the next thing is making sure that the funds are commercial. And what I mean is that what we like to see is the OD have ambition. They want to build the brand. They want to go out and get contracts. We don't really want the OD accounts to be used as a way of funneling money. We want to make sure that the money, that if any money has been moved, that it is commercial. It's something that we're audited on. And so sometimes there is a bit of an education process in this regard. As I mentioned before, upfront funds to give ODs a leg up. We do have funding, but it's not necessarily designated just for operating divisions. So, it's a bit of a chicken and egg sort of situation. How does it get going without the funds? Now, it can do, and sometimes, it depends on the OD, it depends on the service. It can just get out there. But sometimes we do get those requests, okay, look, I want to build a really good website. I really want to build a good marketing strategy. I want to bring in these people. How do I pay them before I actually get the contracts? And then lastly, one of the things that we're working on as well is to make sure that if they are pump, prime, and spin out with the revenue, is to make sure that when they do spin, that any funds that they want to transfer to a spin out is done in a tax efficient way, and it won't affect the company value. So this is something that is not necessarily straightforward. It is actually undergoing a review by KPMG, which we want to make sure that we have a standardized, optimal model for this, so that we can just roll it out to all of our ODs and actually share the best practice with other institutions as well. So if this is something that you think your institution could benefit from, these are sort of things I would say are worth thinking about. I mean, firstly, the name itself, it's not, we call it operating divisions. That has currency at University of Birmingham, but there might be a name that perhaps better suits what you're trying to achieve with it, or just suits your institution better. I think collaborative working between the teams is vital. I think particularly for the operating divisions that are going on that spin-out pathway, you're going to need people who are managing the contracts. You're going to need people actually managing the oversight of the OD, but you're going to need IP managers involved. You're going to need the spin-out team involved, and you're going to have to make sure that everyone is communicating and working in harmony and cohesively. I think that entrepreneurial support is important. I think that if it's possible for incubators, training, entrepreneurs, residents, to help the founders while they're actually on their spin-out journey, their OD journey, and while they're actually going out there and and working with real companies to have that support, or perhaps working with other institutions who can provide that support. And then where does the income go? This is quite an important one because, you know, if, for example, your institution can't provide an account, or money has to be spent over a certain period, how does this work in terms of the spin-out journey? Because they might want to utilize those funds for the spin-out. So we're fortunate to be in a situation where we can provide an account. And, you know, we try to make sure that it's flexible as possible. And then, are there any funds available to support the OD? As I've mentioned, does the institution, is there a way, any kind of funding that can be sourced to give the ODs a leg up? It's not 100% crucial, but it could be of real advantage to them. And then lastly, I do think contracting support is available. Remember that these entities, operating divisions, are going out on the market looking to gain a credible reputation. The backroom support needs to be optimal. We can't have really, really slow process because it just reflects on them. It makes them look efficient because when they're going out and contracting, talking to companies and setting up these agreements, they're just assuming that they're going to work with those researchers, with that OD, and we need to make sure that behind the scenes we're doing everything we can to maximize those commercial interactions and making sure they're efficient and smoothly done. So just to finish now, I'd say there's a lot to cover really with operating divisions, but I suppose the take-home message I'd like to leave you with today is that operating divisions can be used to effectively develop a spin-out proposition in a way that will increase the spin-out's chance of success. Thank you.
So we may have time for just one or two very quick questions if anybody has a burning question. Okay, we may not go around all of these, but feel free to collar Vince afterwards.
Thanks for that, Vince. A quick question. You mentioned that the academic initially was very keen on spinning out as soon as possible. Did you have a process for deciding if they have to go through the operating division prior to doing that, or some kind of framework for doing that?
Do you mean in terms of Dexter?
Yeah, exactly. Like, do you say, actually, we insist that you find a customer first and prove revenue before you're allowed to spin out, or something like that?
It wasn't, I wouldn't say there was a formal process, but I think that there was a bit of, initially there was a bit of a tension between trying to work with them and what they wanted to do, and then gently suggest, actually, this is a way to do it. But I would say that the Dexter was really a bit of a prototype for us. So that was a real case study, and it took about 6 months of working out how to sort of do the contracting in terms of like the licensing and everything like that. So it wasn't, I wouldn't say that there was a ready-made process to say, this is how we do it, because actually they were the OD, they were the proposition that we were thinking, this is the one where we're going to get it right. This is going to be the one that, and of course we had Dan Summers, who was really doing a great job for us, because he was saying to the guys at Dexter, chill out, trust me, this could work. So it really gave us time to actually then put a process in place.
Great. Let's just take one more, I think. So.
Thank you. Hi, it's Fiona Mason, Edinburgh Napier. This is so interesting, fascinating, so thank you. I'm just really interested to know a bit more about the journey that the university might have gone through with the academic inventor about, their employment contracts and maybe the agreements that they ended up getting to release them from any sort of academic tenure in order to focus on their spin-out.
Sorry, could you just repeat that last bit again?
Well, it's just on the sort of, like that tension between, they obviously had an academic position before and then they're wanting to formally spin out, but then they're going into this interim place of the operating division.
Yeah.
So, and how did the university, what was the journey that went down to release them from any other academic remit that they might have had in order to, because I'm presuming that they were like 100% then focusing on the spin-out and working in the operating division,
Yeah.
all, like 100% of the time.
No, yeah. So, I mean, it's one of the things, I mean, firstly, we always need to make sure that the university or their heads of school or the people that they essentially are working for as an academic are happy with this and happy with that journey. I think with operating divisions, in terms of the time remit, most of the operating divisions are quite sort of, there's a number of founders, so it's sort of, there's delegated services, so it's not the case that one person is just completely swamped all the time with contracts, and, we do have to make sure that, that their academic duties are balanced okay with their time developing towards their spin out. But as I say, I mean, the university itself is very supportive of it because of the fact that it's not the situation where academics are just rushing into something and maybe not doing it in a way that really gives what they're going to do the best chance of success. So, there isn't anything in the employment contract that specifically spells out what they should and shouldn't do with an operating division. And there is sort of policies around consultancy time and things like that we adhere to. But so far it's worked, and we always find that the heads of school are, they're informed, they approve it, and then they go on the journey.
Thanks, Vince. Sorry, we're a bit pushed for time, so please do collar Vince after the session. I'm sure he'd be very happy to take further questions on the operating divisions model. So now on to our second case study. So I'll hand over to Emily first. Do you want this mic?
Thank you. Hoping this jumps straight onto the next slide. So today, Veronica and I are going to be talking about how we use spin-out deal teams to achieve the best possible outcomes for projects, new companies, and the university at Edinburgh Innovations. So a wee bit of a recap. Edinburgh Innovations, we're the commercial arm of the University of Edinburgh, and we're quite a large organisation. We've got 150 staff who assist academics and students with multiple different entrepreneurial activities. Some of these highlighted, business development, so that's often getting collaborations with industry kind of through the doors, getting academics linked in that way. Technology transfer for us tends to be IP management. That's the department that I sit under, and licensing and things like that. Staff enterprise is Veronica's department, and that's helping companies go on that spin-out journey. Student enterprise, we sit those differently. Kind of does what it says on the tin, new form student companies, consultancy, investment. We're lucky enough to have OCC, Old College Capital, which is our Edinburgh Investment Fund. So we have, capital to deploy should they choose to. Communications and marketing are great in terms of getting the message out there, bringing people in. And we also have a strategics project team who do kind of the longer term projects, bringing in companies who are going to collaborate over the next kind of 10 years or so and deploy some serious investment into the university on kind of key strategic areas. And just a wee bit about our impact and numbers. Marketing lovers to show this slide. So this is last academic year, so 22-23. I'll just point out a couple of them because you can all read. So, for example, 84 patent applications filed in the last year, 105 new student startups, I think. We have over 900 academics engaged with us at EI, which is pretty good across the university, and multiple more highlights as well. And the problem with being such a big organization is that when we do try and spin out, it becomes a company-wide effort because there are so many moving cogs. And Veronica, a few years ago, set up a process of the deal teams, which she's going to come and talk to you about a wee bit more.
Hiya. I'm Veronica. I head up the staff enterprise team at the University of Edinburgh through the, let's go on to this one. So basically, we introduced deal teams. It was probably around a couple of years ago, and so far 8 companies have been formed through this process. Why did we have to do it? What were the challenges that we face? And I think these may resonate with some of you. They may or may not be true, but these are some of the criticisms that have been levied. It's an opaque process. Nobody knows what they're getting into. Nobody knows what the outcome's going to be. The university's basically out to get as much as they can from them, and they don't know how to make that different. Siloed support, so as Emily indicated, there are a lot of people involved with our academic colleagues at a lot of different stages, and really, sometimes we find our academic colleagues might play one off against the other. So Emily told me that you would only take 10% equity stake, and now you're telling me. So they would try to do that. So it was a challenge for us. Also perceived as a very long and bureaucratic process. Lots of toing, lots of throwing, lots of discussion, lots of aggravation. So, we're trying to get this as really very much a smoother process, and try to remove that sense of it's all about the university getting the best deal for itself and not for everybody. So the shape of the deal teams, we are in a very fortunate position. We do have a large TTO, so I recognise that not everybody does, and this might not work for everybody. But you will have people who have to fulfill all of these functions. So the enterprise executive is usually the project manager on this, and their role is very much about protecting the academic, developing the proposition, ensuring that all of the different bits and pieces are in place to have a strong, investable company, business plans, team, commercial expertise, etc. Tech transfer, those guys are the ones that have to do the sort of heads of terms and the licensing agreement. They've got the responsibility for managing the IP asset and how it's used and exploited. We also have an investment executive, as Emily indicated. We've got Old College Capital. And whilst Old College Capital don't invest in every single spin-out that we have, they always take the investor perspective. So they're able to say to us, actually, do you know what you're proposing here? That's not going to fly. It's really not good. It's not investor friendly. So they give that perspective. Legal services, useful for them to know what's happening and what's coming down their pipeline, because they have to do all this sort of hard work around drafting all of the 1,700 agreements that need to be put into place when a spin out. I'm exaggerating slightly. Business development representative. These tend to be the people who know our academic colleagues best, and they know where this has originated from, and they know where the bones are buried, and they know where all of the collaboration agreements have committed the university to options to X company, Y company. So it's really important to get their input throughout. Others, as required, we bring in whoever we think has got an interest or who could add to the efficacy of what we're doing. So essentially, it's not rocket salad, It's a project management activity, and the project manager will establish the team, develop an initial timeline. I say outline and initial because, as we all know, there's many a slip twixt cup and lip, and you may have a deadline of the end of July, but it could very well be September before the deal is formally agreed, particularly if you've got investment coming in at the same time. Communicate the team composition and the outline timetable to clients. So ensure our academic colleagues are aware of the fact that we're doing this, that we are trying to find an agreement, we are trying to find a route, and we are working collaboratively internally to support their spin out. And that's very much what we do. We'd also then enable lessons learned to make sure that actually we are learning. We've only done 8 of these to date. We've got another 7 in the pipeline. We're learning as we go. So, active deal teams, as I indicated, we've had 8 go through it. We've got 7 in process. So what do we do with them? Well, essentially, we progress the project towards company formation. And that's very much the focus of them. That's very much the sort of rationale behind it. We try to set out timelines to manage the expectations because these take a lot of work. Spinouts take a lot of work, they take a lot of administration, they take a lot of paperwork. So we want to make sure that everybody is in line with the academic team's expectations. Regular meeting and communication, and a repository of information so everybody has access to the same information at the same time. Each deal team member contributes to tasks, so it's not just left to me, it's not just left to Emily, it's not just left to the business development person, and it's not just left to the academic. We're all actually working together for this. We've had 14 running between 23 and 24. So changes that we basically have introduced following each one that's gone through. We also know that we need to build in project team reviews with our academic colleagues as well. We have our behind the doors, behind the scenes discussions, but we ensure that we have project teams, including our academic representatives, because they need to know where we are on the page as well. Originally, we hadn't included the legal representative because we thought we'll just present it to them when it's ready and they'll just do the work. But actually, it's useful. It's useful to sort of, we discovered, it's useful, funny enough, to communicate with them so they can manage their workload. We also recognise that not everybody needs to attend every meeting. You know, we start off with a quarterly meeting. We then move to bi-weekly. We then move to weekly as the pressure builds towards the deadline. But not everybody needs to put into everything. Yeah. Potential to generate new templates. That's one thing that we discovered because everybody was working with slightly different paperwork. And what we thought, as we review it, we discover that actually we can create new templates that everybody is all then clear and transparent about. We can share those with our academic colleagues and everybody knows what needs to be done by whom. So that's us. Yeah, that's the deal teams. Any questions at this point? Happy to answer, but yeah. Hi.
Hi, I'm Nick Gossett from Loughborough. So when you've got a deal team, where do you fit in, say, the academics and their lawyers that might be representing them? So how does the to and fro work between the different parties and your deal team?
Yeah, I mean, essentially they need to have a separate discussion, separate negotiation. So usually where it comes together is around about where the heads of terms are being drafted, and that's when we bring the deal team and the client's legal team together, so we can then have that sort of open and frank discussion. But, you know, we share everything with our academic colleague and request that they share with legal as soon as they feel ready. What we tend to find is our academic colleagues our spinouts tend not to want to engage legal representation too early. We actively encourage them to do that earlier than they're prepared to do. They don't want to spend the money on it. So we're saying, well, actually, it's worth spending a few grand now to make sure that you've got a sustainable deal for the future. Yeah.
What's your finish line? When do you stop?
Yeah, the deal is done on incorporation, and we then would sort of wait usually around a month, 6 weeks till the dust settles, and then we do the review of it. But we do have ongoing engagement with the companies as they form through the Old College Capital investment team. They also manage the equity stake, the portfolio that the university holds of equities. They are board observers, and I'll usually grab them for a coffee and say, what's keeping you awake tonight? You know.
Okay, right, brilliant. Thank you, Veronica, and thank you, Emily. So, the next 30 minutes, we'd like to get you guys to do some work. So, fantastic, we've got a full house here, so that there are no empty tables, which is brilliant. What we'd like you to do is to, obviously drawing upon hopefully some of the inspiration you've gleaned from the two case studies, is consider firstly these three questions. So, you know, how could these models potentially translate into your institutions? I mean, as you know, Veronica has recognised, we've got huge heterogeneity of institutions represented here at the conference, from the very small to the very large. how could you see these working or not in your different organisations? What challenges would exist in implementing these approaches? And do you have any improvements? Are there things that you could see could be refined, could make it work within your institution? These are all questions that we'd like you to discuss around the tables. What we'll do is spend about 15 minutes on these three. We've then got a second set, and I think we originally planned to do 2 quick feedback sessions. I think because we've got so many, what we'll do is leave the feedback to the end. So I will pipe up in 15 minutes or so, move everybody on to the next 3 questions, and then we'll have sort of 5-10 minutes at the end to go around the tables and just get probably the 1 or 2 key points of feedback, key messages, key takeaways that you've been discussing as groups. Hopefully that's all clear. So anybody who's not on a table, I'm looking at the gentleman here, please do find a spare seat, and we'll be sort of hovering around to sort of see how the discussions are going and take any questions. But over to you guys. Thank you. So I think many of you may have naturally progressed on to this second set of questions already, but for those who haven't, a few more to throw into the mix for the next 15 minutes or so. So, what other initiatives have you deployed or maybe seen deployed elsewhere which could address the kind of challenges which you've heard articulated today? What suggestions do you have in terms of, beyond equity stakes? How could spin-out best practice be improved, but also be recorded and shared? How do we ensure there is that rising tide? And then we'll come back to everybody at the end with to really get your thoughts. What's maybe the one idea discussed today that you'd be most keen to implement? What are the key takeaways? Maybe a particular challenge that you foresee with any of these. So we'll give you another 15 minutes or so to discuss these, and then come back to you for some feedback at the end. Thank you. Right, everyone. I'm determined to bring us in on time for lunch. So if I could ask everyone to sort of pause the discussions, obviously to be continued over lunch if necessary, and we'll just come around very quickly to each table and maybe just get your one key takeaway, anything burning you'd like to sort of share with the group. So I'll come to this table first.
I think there's potential for all of us. It's given us real food for thought, and we love a structure. And a process and a procedure and project management. So I think for all of us, it's really given us some good stuff to go back with to the businesses or our institutions over the next few days and see what we can do. Is there anything else anybody else wants to add?
I think you've spoken very well for us, thank you.
All right, I'll pounce on the next rapporteur then on this table. Who's? Go on, Jackie.
Hi, I want to say that we have shamelessly plagiarized. I spoke to Vince last year. We are doing it slightly differently, slightly different risk profile. But I think the one thing from our table is it is really difficult to do something like operating divisions unless you have a company. Like Oxford University Innovation or University of Birmingham Enterprise. Inside a university, unless you have a very flexible, very open, risk-taking institution, which I've never come across, it may be very challenging to do that sort of quite unusual stuff.
Great point, Jackie, and yeah, imitation being the sincerest form of flattery, of course. All right, so I'll come to this table next. Any volunteers?
Yeah, so we are all now employees of Birmingham Enterprise Limited. Don't know how that happened. It's given us some real food for thought. We, I think on this table, concentrate a lot on the OD mechanism, and it's given us some food for thought to kind of go away. I know that at Exeter there was a separate limited company that was then spun back in, so I think we'll pick up these conversations in future as well to see how that applies for us.
Thank you. So yeah, further fuel to the fire of the debate of do you have an in-house unit or a separate commercial company? Right. Anyone on this table like to volunteer some feedback? Don't all shout at once.
I think we were really interested in the operating division concept and the model. Again, speaking much to the colleagues over on the other table, we'd love to think that we were able to do it, but it's potentially for myself in our institution, we're definitely a bit risk averse, so it's a bit of a pipe dream, but something I think we could see real application for, particularly with sheep, and with sort of software service-led sort of type models, and some really interesting conversations, and I think about how we'd actually get the sort of process and the framework set up, I think would be the biggest challenge, but lots of really, really good learnings to be had from Vincent and his team, so thank you.
Thank you. So, Thomas, looks like you've been volunteered.
I've spoken far too much over the course of the last 2 days. No, again, I think we found the operating divisions model incredibly interesting and a great experiment to watch and to learn from. I think, again, echoing, we had a fascinating discussion. We're not sure we quite answer your questions, right? And I think it is about how do you implement in different types of institutions where, again, if you don't have a commercialization company or some kind of commercial vehicle to manage this. And then there's some questions that came up about how do you manage the risk of lots of different contracts coming in. And then same thing about how do you manage the engagement of the academic. I think going back, they've got their core job, right? And how do you bring them in, what the mechanisms are. I think, again, lots to learn, and it's a great experiment, I think, to watch and follow. So.
Thanks, Thomas. Very good. So, come to this table next. Any?
Thanks, guys, for the presentations. Really useful. So, I think from the conversation on our table, I think the different institutions and groups represented different stages of evolution on some of this activity. A comment on the sort of ODs. So I'm from Southampton. We run something similar in terms of enterprise units, but not as a pre-spin vehicle. We've been using it just to grow consultancy activity, and actually a vital part of our consultancy ecosystem at Southampton. And it is driving consultancy, so I just mentioned that sort of in passing. Forgive me, it's not to do with spin. On the spin-out activity, one of the things that I flagged, and I'm offered to sort of share here, is from a legal perspective, I know for a fact that academics don't engage in their own legal counsel too early. It costs them money. One of the things we found quite useful is to share model agreements, model documents. And one of the reasons for that is from a legal perspective, the documents for a founder academic going into a spin-out company is quite nuanced. It's different from just a mainstream startup company. That's not always understood. So one of the things that we've done is to try and inform the academics and save them a bit of money. We're not wedded to certain model documents, but we offer them at an early stage so they can have more of an informed discussion with their legal counsel. And we have found that that's been quite useful to get some of that early conversation going. Thanks.
Great, thank you. Fantastic point. So come to this table next. Who's your rapporteur?
Well, Adam comes to me. So I think we loved both ideas, but we got straight into the challenges and actually quite shocking for me because I thought everyone would have much more support than we've got at Teesside. But actually it's a real challenge around the technology transfer office support, even in institutions where you think that they would have that support. So we spent quite a long time talking about that. And then, I think you were plugging iCure. Yeah, no. But that was a real opportunity, and actually there was a real lack of knowledge and awareness of that program, and that was also another opportunity to develop some of those stuff. But definitely the idea of having a pre-spin-out opportunity to explore and make some of the mistakes that you might make is very appealing. I don't know if anyone wants to add anything else.
Great, thank you. And yeah, I mean, iCure is tremendous, and anybody not familiar with that, I'd certainly recommend exploring. I know there's some colleagues at the conference representing iCure. Okay, I'll come to this table next. Any? Thank you.
So we started discussing what this would look like for a smaller organisation where you haven't got the 150 strong resources that we've heard about, however much we, sort of love those, and various ideas emerged, one of which was the shared services TTO ideas that are out there, and whether they might work, and various people's experiences of that, which, there's some good, some bad. Also, whether or not your institution's got the appetite for a subco, and if not, then the OD model might be trickier to pursue. Although if you do have some of those existing services that we'd heard around that might not be as joined up as they appear to be in the examples we've heard about, maybe there's still something that could be done there about bringing those together in a more coherent fashion. Then we got onto the realism of spin-outs for smaller organisations, where really, actually, they might come along once every 3 years, if at all, and more appropriate routes might be contract, service income, consultancy income, those kind of things. So actually, do we need to be conscious across the range of institutions we've got here that spin-outs may not be a priority and may not be resourced or valued in the same way as they are clearly in some of the bigger institutions. And then the final end of the discussion I've made a note of here was that the idea of where there is some IP that the institution may not think is viable as a spin-out, but actually should it just be given back to the academics and see how they get on? So that's where we kind of, and colleagues over here might want to add to that, because I didn't really catch all of that. Thank you.
That's great, thank you. And clearly, what one size fits all is a very difficult proposition across the whole universe of HEIs. But yeah, maybe shared services, Research England bids, TTOs in terms of that operating division model, maybe? Right, this table, any volunteers?
I'm going to copy some of what the last speaker gave, but something that was really impressive was the diversity of the different institutions and how they're treating it. We have some universities here that don't take revenue from their spin-out, some that do, some that nurture, some that don't. Once you spin out, it's good luck. And there's justified reasons that we discussed for each of the different models, and they were all valid. So it's just interesting. There's 1,000 ways to do it, right? And it depends what fits. In terms of the models, I think we sort of agreed they'd be very difficult to just straight implement that in our institution for whatever concrete reason. It just wouldn't fit. But the principle behind them does fit. So the idea of further nurturing the spin-out opportunity and giving it that soft start, that principle is incredibly useful. So yeah, I think we're all quite excited about that.
Thank you. And I think you've always got to start with a strong principle, and I think the principles behind both these approaches are super strong. Right, 3 more tables to go. Any volunteers on this one? Alistair.
Cheers. I'll just go on. I could go on for a while actually, so I'll just go on to the second point on spin-out best practice. I think there's a bit of a shout out to a CCF project where people are trying to get together within the set square to sort of standardise terms for universities. So the idea of best practice as standard terms. Being from Imperial, we're part of 10U, so we have to do the UCIT guide whether we like it or not. And so all our terms and conditions and stuff are on the web anyway, so people can use them, and there's a new process around that. So we have project managers to run through. But that standardisation, I think one of the biggest challenges I observe, which I mentioned, is actually how we work with each other in terms of rev shares and assignments. Our expectations on rev shares and assignments with each other can be stumbling blocks that we're pushing terms out that we wouldn't accept ourselves. So I think there is a potential project to standardise that across the sector to make ourselves a little bit friction thing. And we also touched on when academics move across to universities and how we work on those. On the operating units, we do some. They are service-based, they're non-scalable, and will probably never be spun out. And we run them through subsidiary companies for tax efficiency. And the people who do it are doing part of their day jobs at the university, but they're getting data for their research. So an example is we've got a team that measures all the air quality in London. Therefore, they have great influence in terms of policy and impact, and they get all the data for publications. But they're doing that as a service to 32 boroughs. So it depends what you want to get out of it. And we do have some academics who do set themselves up as units, and we can give them cover as well. but I don't think they would ever really spin out and take the risk. So, any other bits?
Thanks, Alistair. So sometimes real value in actually keeping these things in-house without ever spinning out, but horses for courses. Right. Who can I turn to on this table?
Hi, great presentations. I think we welcomed the chance to test business ideas through the ODs, and we saw it being a good solution for more service-based companies and proposals. We did have concerns about the kind of separation financially from the university if there wasn't a company to deliver those finances who would own the IP during the phase before spin-out. I think the scale of the institutions around this table meant that probably wasn't going to be anything that we were going to be doing. We do turn to external programmes, such as the iCure programme, Scottish Enterprise High Growth Spin-out in Scotland, and the Impact Accelerator account to support that early stage before spin-out. That's the appropriate route. It was supported by NIHR, who's sitting at the table. They thought that the OD model is very good for developing that proposal before the company spins out.
Thank you, thank you. And last but not least,
we've got two BMF universities on this table, the University of Melbourne, #1 university in Australia, and Imperial, top 5 university in the UK. It was interesting to hear their terms. Correct me if I get this right. So your terms are, there's a £50,000 license for the... Do you want to just go through the top 3 terms?
Basically, I think what you're talking about is the licensing terms we built in our Founders Choice program. So I think basically what we could share here is we just want to streamline the process. And so that's why all the terms is non-negotiable. But what we are doing is try to facilitate to the founders to grow their company. So that's why we try to be extremely generous, I would say, because no royalty kicking in before £50 million of net sales. And also the upfront fee can be paid in 5 installments. So basically, no fee has to be paid by the founders in the first year. So that's the approach that we take.
So very generous. And then at Melbourne, you've spent 5 years working out a stage gate process, Lachlan.
Okay, standing between everyone and lunch. We have in a single agreement, one set of signatures where a startup can have an option that translates to a license, that translates to an assignment of the IP when certain levels are met. And so they can have that within a week if they agree to everything, or a year if they don't.
Thank you. So yeah, the value of those sort of non-negotiable express spin-out deals in improving transactional efficiency. So thank you, everybody. I've failed woefully to bring us in on time there, but it's been great to hear the feedback from the various discussions. Hopefully plenty that you can take away with you and feed into your practice in your different institutions. We'll wrap it up there. Thank you ever so much for attending. Please do complete the feedback, which will be coming out, I guess, in the next few days. And otherwise, enjoy lunch and the rest of the afternoon. Thank you.